When I started working in the sexuality field in 2012, I had the same assumptions about sexuality as everyone else, namely that sex was about arousal, leading to orgasm, and that it was primarily physical and energetic. And in the last video, I referred to that as being the arousal model. And what I thought then was that the obstacles which my clients had in experiencing all of that, which they were paying me to fix, was that they'd received a lot of unwelcome or unwanted or inept touch in the past that had made their bodies hypervigilant, so very anxiously focused on what's going on, what does this mean, what's going to happen next, and so on. And that in turn made it impossible for them to relax, and so impossible to experience pleasure. So again, my thinking went that if the touch that they received from me was agreed in advance, so boundaried, was controlled by them, so they could restrict or stop that touch at any time, and was obviously for them was in service to their pleasure, then they could just gradually let go of that sense of vigilance, and they could then become embodied, and through that embodiedness they could experience pleasure, and then that would lead to arousal, which would lead to orgasm, and so on. None of those assumptions which I had then are wrong, but they're incomplete. And what I gradually noticed, and obviously this is over quite a long period of time because I'm a very slow learner, but I gradually noticed a number of other things. So firstly, where clients would often want the touch to start would be in relatively neutral parts of their body, so perhaps their hands or arms, their feet, their upper back, and areas like that. And the touch that would be welcome would be very meditative, gentle touch, often still, often just holding, and that quality of touch would engender what often felt like quite a vague feeling of safety, and often that feeling was a surprise to the client, because they would feel, well, they're going to be getting a sexy tantra massage or something like that, but they would experience this this initial feeling of safety, which seemed to be a bit underwhelming often, but that feeling of safety then seemed to give way to feelings of embodiment, feelings of relaxation, and in due course feelings of pleasure. And we could call that process, in contrast to the arousal process, a process of opening. Now, within that process, several things were apparent, but what was noticeable was within that sense of safe, pleasurable, relaxed embodiment, what one of my clients called languorousness, arousal would gradually arise. So we've got those two things arising of opening and arousal. The next thing that I started to realize was there was a direction within the body of where the touch was to go. So people might start, for instance, on their upper back, and then, but just as it were naturally, they would notice that they would want to be touched on the front of the body, on the legs, or something like that. So there was a direction to the touch, and that direction came with a heightening of this dual sense of opening and arousal. And what seemed clear is that, contrary to what I first thought, that sense of opening wasn't just a sort of preliminary stage to make arousal possible, that these two apparently contrasting senses work dynamically together to kind of heighten each other. And what was also the case is that that sense of opening wasn't just simply opening to arousal, it was opening to everything. So very often my clients would experience quite strong emotion, quite often grief or sadness of some sort, or joy. They might well experience visions. They would experience perhaps vivid memories. So that opening wasn't just an opening to our usual way of thinking, just an opening to becoming more aroused. As I said, it was opening to everything. And what I also realised is that this process was natural. So there was a natural progression through the body. There was a natural heightening of this dual sense of opening and arousal. And there was a gradual enlivening of the body. So just almost as a natural process, the body became gradually more engaged, and noticeably the pelvis would often become quite cat-like, quite kind of delicious in the way that a cat might sort of stretch out its back. So this was a process that was both natural, it was directional, it was embodied. My arrogant assumption when I first started work was that I was there to give pleasure. But what I've gradually come to understand is that the body does everything naturally of itself if the circumstances are right. All I required to do was to help to create those circumstances and just be responsive. So this, as it were, alternative way of looking at sexuality is very different from just arousal. It's enlivening, it's vivifying, it brings in all the faculties that we have, our imaginal faculties, our emotional faculties, our memory, and so on. And also seeing this natural process, I came to understand how an ideology of arousal only inhibits this process because it misses out the essential early stages of it, and it disregards a very large part of the experience. So rather than experiencing this richness of everything, if we're just caught by the arousal model, we're anxiously thinking, am I aroused enough? Is this working? And that sort of thing, which just really cuts the whole process off. So it seems to me that this alternative perspective explains why women often complain of a lack of arousal, but also explains something which seemed then a bit weird to me, that often women who were very sexual, who would, without going into details, who would just do everything, they had the feeling that something was missing, that was some part of them that wasn't being expressed. And I think I now understand what that part is. So this is an alternative way of looking at sexuality, and in the next video I'll explain what I think are some of the implications of that.